Welcome back. I'm Michael Bull, and this is the Commercial Real Estate Show. Today we're talking about auctions. We have Scott Schwartz here with the Commercial Auction Group, and this segment we're going to talk about some tips for buyers. So, Scott, what is your number one tip for bidders going to an auction?
Number one tip for bidders going to an auction: don't think about it too much. and I mean that. I've seen this time and time again. You see a property coming up for auction. Mm-hmm. We sell things on an as-is, where-is basis. Okay, that puts you at a little bit of maybe an uneasy feeling, but you say, okay, you've got some time before the auction, so let's do some due diligence. Let's maybe get an inspector in here. Let's do some things and ask the right questions. And it's always important to call the auction company. That typically most assets coming up for auction will have an individual sale manager that's appointed that should be knowledgeable about the property and get the information that you need. And it's nice to establish a relationship with them, but I mean that because I think you do your due diligence, and sometimes people can talk themselves out of a deal. Mm-hmm. They can psych themselves out. They've done all this homework on the front end, that when the auction rolls around, it's like a deer in a headlight. They freeze up. And maybe that happens one or two times to them again before they realize that they shouldn't have thought about it too much, because I do see most successful auction buyers time and time again do nothing more than put boots on the ground, ask a few basic questions, and make quick, smart decisions, and usually walk away with an opportunity.
Yeah, and it helps when these sellers are doing auctions for their properties that they do provide a lot of deliverables and due diligence. So, it's easier for buyers to do their due diligence, don't have to spend as much money. So, how much due diligence should a buyer do if they don't know they're going to get the asset? I mean,
it's kind of a double-edged sword. For an auction company, you want to have good basic information. Mm-hmm. And if for instance, if you're working for a bank, the reason certain types of information may not exist is because they didn't want to pay for them, or there's not time to pay for them. So
the sellers didn't.
The sellers didn't want to do that. It's not to mean that there's something hidden behind that. And what people have got to remember too, auctioneers are also licensed brokers. We're bound by the same laws and so forth that a conventional broker is. And so if we know of something blatantly wrong with the property, we're going to disclose that. We believe in being very transparent. And in fact, I think the more transparent you can be, even on a negative side of what things that affect the property on a negative basis, works in our favor. Because now a bidder kind of feels, hey, wait a second, this guy seems like a nice guy. He's given us the good, the bad, the ugly about the property, and we feel like we can trust him to a certain level, and hopefully give someone a greater level of ease when it does come to bidding. And I didn't mean to be silly about saying don't think about it too much, because when you're dealing in real estate with those types of dollar amounts, it's nothing to not think about, but don't overanalyze two things. Come in with an intent of making a quick, smart decision and be ready to do business.
Okay, and how should they also be ready? They need to have their cash ready, right? And they have the mentality ready?
Well, this is what I would say. I think you get nervous. Maybe if you're doing it for the first time or first few times, the best way to settle your nerves is to do this. Have the auction the night before. And what I mean by that is if your money's in line, you know where you're getting your financing, you know about the property, you feel good, more times than not, you will have already set a number. I always recommend set a maximum. And if you set a maximum of $1 million, come to the auction knowing that just a couple things can happen. You can either pay $1 million for it, for which you'd be happy,
or less,
which you'd be happier.
Yeah.
Or if it goes over that $1 million, you get in the car and there'll be another day. Now, I'm telling you that now that we're talking on a radio show, but the day of the auction, I'm going to try to get you to bid more than you dreamed of. My feeling about every good auction, successful auction, is you always bid up to what you wanted to pay, and then just bid 3 more times, and you'll get it. Just hang in there. You'll get it. Hang in there.
Yeah. And what about getting caught up in that psychological of trying to win? Everybody wants to win everything they're doing, right? Oh, yeah. And you're there, you're spending the time. What would you tell a buyer about, if in a buyer's view, if you're advising a buyer, what would you tell them about that?
It depends on what kind of discipline you have. I've seen some people will bring someone with them, not as a guardian capacity, because they'll go have lunch together after the auction, but as the capacity to say, hey, look, I'm going to keep you straight on the on the path that we talked about
Yeah.
the night before. But it can happen because often when you strip price tags off of something, which is what happens in an auction sale, there maybe you can find some history of a past list price, but at this point it's an auction sale. Sometimes you may not be able to put an exact number of what you think it could potentially worth, and so you look towards the others at the auction to kind of validate what you're bidding. And it happens to where if someone on the front end has done a lot of due diligence, and this goes back to doing inspections and so forth, and they've got that element of time on the front end, and they said, we're not going to bid a dime over $300,000. What you'll find is, and not all the time, but many times, if I've got 300, I'm asking them for 310. They'll go ahead and give you 310 because they do have that front end element of time, and they look around, they see the other people at the auction, and it seems to make sense for them at the time. And most times, they'll walk away with what they think is a pretty good deal, but sometimes they'll go a little bit over what they thought they would pay. It just depends on the individual bidder.
I know one of the things that we've done for people who are bidding on properties and bidding on notes is they'll come in and tell us what level of due diligence they want us to do for them. So, they may say, look, we want to do preliminary comps and analysis, or we want you to visit the site, or we also want rent comps, and we want to know the trends in that market, and we want you to go real deep and check out the tenants and that sort of thing. So I think you also got to look at how big is this property, how big is this opportunity to decide how deep you go, and if you have advisors, how deep do you want to pay them to go, right?
Yeah, exactly. The more moving parts, certainly the bigger the asset, the price of poker goes up, and so you want to do a adequate amount of due diligence based upon what you're looking at. We've sold multifamily apartment units where you're looking at rent rolls and expenses and this type of thing, and so I'm not certainly trying to say disregard due diligence, but hopefully within a small period of time you can get the information that you need to make a smart decision.
All right, we'll stay with us for a short break. We'll have some advice for advisors and brokers on the process of auctions. We'll be right back.
The Commercial Real Estate Show is brought to you by Florida International University and Bull Realty Commercial Brokerage, a great place to do business. For more information on these companies or to access additional podcasts, videos, or blogs, visit commercialrealestateshow.com.